the many ways to view the news coverage of Apple. This is Mac Voices. This edition of Mac Voices is supported by you, our viewers and listeners, through our Patreon and PayPal sponsorship options. To learn more, visit macvoices.com/support. Welcome to Mac Voices. This is the talk of the Apple community, and I'm Chuck Joyner. This is the third and final part in this Mac Voices live conversation. In the first two parts, the panel took on multiple monitors, ultra-wide monitors, cover spaces, and using or not using your Apple Watch. This time around, though, we focus a little bit more on some of the journalism that Apple has to endure, focusing on one particular article that I brought to the table that bothered me a bit. I talk about why it bothered me, and some of the panel members didn't necessarily agree. Let's go back and find out why. Okay, so let me paste it in the chat room so everybody can enjoy. Oops, sorry.
The word enjoy is doing an awful lot of work in that sentence, I think.
Jay, I'm kind of intrigued because that you say that this didn't bother you. There was one particular one that really punched my button, though, on this, and that is where they were criticizing Apple for the Safari experiment, and that Apple is failing in public, and it's like any business book you read says fail bravely, fail fast, and move on and learn from it.
That's what you tell people to buy your book later because they have dreams of making it one day. Apple's already made it. Stop failing in public, Apple. You have enough money. Hire your research groups. I know you spend all that money on R&D. That's why you say you are so expensive, because you do all this research. Stop doing it in public. Stop failing. And honestly, like I said, this article itself, it's a stupid article, but what they're saying is like a big duh. Apple cares about making money because that's what a business does. Oh,
yeah, they have an obligation to their shareholders because they are a corporation with publicly traded stock. Their job is to make profit.
Yes.
The end.
Apple is not our friend.
No.
And people seem to not realize that. And they get pissed off when Apple doesn't do the thing that they feel like Apple should do, because they take it as a personal affront. When in fact, what the company is doing is making a financial based decisions on what they think is going to sell well. Now, the Safari thing, that was straight up a mistake. And I don't think Apple dumped that in our lap as an experiment. I think they really thought that's what Safari needed to be, and then it rolls out, and the whole rest of the world is like, wow, are we on After Dark yet? Or
turd in a cream puff. Apple, no, we're serving us a turd in a cream puff.
I just wanted to make sure that any analogies that I use are appropriate for the part of the show that we're on. So Apple released this, and then the lashback that they got, rightly so, because it's straight up hot garbage what they did. It's
tell them how you really feel, Jeff.
Well, let me think about it.
I disagree. It's hot garbage.
Let's not go down that hole.
But to Apple's credit, when they realized what a turd that they dropped on us, they started working on changing up the interface right away. So at least there's that. But still, whatever planning meeting they had where they came up with a new mobile Safari, with the new Safari in general, and thought, yeah, this is good. Whatever it is that they were smoking, they got ripped off.
I feel personally attacked after reading this article, considering the conversation I had with my wife yesterday, where I sat there and I looked at the rumors of Google's new Tensor chip and what it was going to bring. And I was like, I want to try it so bad. And my wife was like, how would you manage your Apple Card? And I'm like, dang it, Apple, You got me. You really got me. Like, I'm stuck. I'm stuck and I hate it. And it's like they've done their job on me. They have successfully capitalized me out of using any other product. I don't have a choice at this point. And once they've done that, they can do whatever they want, and they know it. And it's like, what are they going to do? Switch to Android, and then a bunch of maniacal people in the boardroom laugh and go, like that'll never happen. And that's the thing. All they have to do is sit there and wait and sit on their money and say, what if we try this? Yeah, that sounds fun, whatever. And then at that point, it's like, oh, great, Huawei can't use Android's operating system anymore. Congratulations, Apple's market share just grew 3 times bigger that day. Like they don't have to work as hard. And honestly, it's like, it seems like they don't try anymore. I'm just saying, it feels like they don't try. The stuff that they do sometimes, there's like one thing that's like, someone in that company is still passionate. He must have just started, or they must have just started. I'm sorry.
He must be new. I've had that feeling looking at stuff that rolls out. Like, yeah, you must be new.
It's like, oh,
Okay.
that's not going to last long.
Okay, so wait a minute. I want to get this in from the chat room. Webb says, and this is a really insightful comment. Apple is a corporation. The Mac, iPhone, etc. users are a community. Appreciate the difference.
Thank you,
And
Webb.
that's a really, really good point, Webb. But Jay, I felt like this article, I mean, look, it feels like a hit piece. It feels like they just reached out at anything they could find that was anti-Apple, that could even be twisted to be anti-Apple. They tied together, and then like, oh my God, the one thing that Apple values the most, their image is in danger. And
but when I bring up Keynote, though, you feel like that's a hit piece.
Okay,
So-
that's fighting words right there.
That's different. That's different.
That's personal. But I mean,
yelling is starting.
Like, here's the thing: is that there's a difference. To me, there's a difference between having feedback about something. Like Jay's like, Jay has a mild allergy to Keynote. If he spends more than an hour with it, his arms start looking like Chuck's, and then he can't wear his Apple Watch anymore. Oh, wait. So the thing of like, there's a difference between I'm trying to do this thing and use this tool from Apple to do it, and it's not working the way that I need it to, is valid criticism. Now, are you representative of the free world in that criticism? Maybe, maybe not. Like, there's a difference there. But Keynote is dumb is not useful feedback, or I don't like it is not useful feedback. No, that like there are people who write those sorts of articles. And I think sometimes what gets lost in the punditry talking head echo chamber is if it's not for me, then it's not for anybody. And that is absolutely not true, because Apple makes a lot of things for consumers. And like Webb said, that is like a super insightful comment that I think gets lost a lot. Apple is a company, and we are a community that happens to really, really like the stuff from this company. But Jay, the thing that you said that really stuck with me is something that I've beat on forever. Like, I remember talking about this over at TUA when Windows 7 was coming out, which was good. I hope Windows does something awesome. I want it to look great. I want it to be responsive. I want it to be useful, because I want Apple to have to compete. Because if Apple is really like, wow, Windows has done something amazing, and now we have to keep up with the innovation and the customer experience and all of the nice things that Windows is doing now, then that's a very different Apple than what we have seen in the past, right? So like there was a point where they were really having to compete with Android on stuff. Like, does anyone else remember when you couldn't copy and paste on iOS? Does anybody remember before it was called iOS? You couldn't put apps in a folder, like the jailbreak community making it so you could customize things. That's the kind of stuff that made Apple pay attention. And that's the kind of stuff that that I miss when we start looking at like mobile development and desktop OS and stuff like that. Like, I don't need all my tabs put in a blender in order for you to call that innovation. Like, make it so that it handles the tabs better, make it more accessible, make it easier to see that stuff down the side, for example. Stuff like that would be a very, very different criticism. And I think sometimes, like this article, people will just lob criticism. Like, honestly, I got partway into that article and then just scanned the rest of it looking for since Steve Jobs died, because that's a tired old horse that people like to trot out and beat from time to time just to make sure it's still dead, which is, fantastic. So I think it's not that there's not merit in criticizing the company, but I think sometimes that stuff gets lost in the larger conversation. So there you go.
And Jay, there's one other thing I got to point out to you, that I never feel good with anybody saying Apple has all the money. They're sitting on the money. They're not doing enough with the money. They're making too much money. They should do this because they've made all this money. Circle back to what Jeff said when we started this part of the conversation. Apple's a company. That's what their charge is. That's what their duty is. It's in their best interest to produce superior products, or at least top level products. Whether you believe they're superior or not is another matter. But that's what they are supposed to do. That's their reason for being. And to make money, and they have chosen to try to make great products. We just spent 40 minutes extolling the virtues of the Apple Watch. So,
before that though, we spent how much longer talking about every other third-party monitor, because the one thing that many people loved and have been asking Apple to do for a long time, they refused to make.
Yeah, but they got out of the business. They decided that wasn't a business they wanted to be in.
Yeah, but then they threw salt in the wound and said, "Oh, you know what? We really are in the business," and they did a reference monitor.
We're in the $10,000 business.
Well, yeah, but Ferrari doesn't manufacture 1995 cars.
Ferrari also doesn't have 80% of they don't have a product line that sits on Forbes top 10.
Jay, I don't understand why that's important at all, whether Apple had 1%, 50, or 99% of the market.
The problem that I have...
Ultimately, it's a voluntary transaction. There's nobody holding people a gun to the head of those, 9, or 12 million people who bought iPads last quarter, or watches, or anything else. So
I agree with you. And that's, to me, my argument here is not we need to yell at Apple about having too much money. What we need to stop doing, in my opinion, is swinging in like Batman every time someone tries to write a hit piece. Because honestly, when you're the most expensive company in the world, people make their money talking crap about you. That's just what they're going to do. And they don't need us defending them. And to me, what I see is we get so much on our high horses and try to white knight every time someone says something condescending about Apple. I guess black knight for me, I don't know. But so condescending about Apple that it's like we skip the parts that made sense. Like, hey, every other country in the world right now is dealing with people working from home. And the majority of those companies have continued to see growth, even though people have been working from home. So when your employees say, hey, we would really love it if there was more flexibility in working from home, we've shown that we can do it. What is the problem? Oh, well, it degrades company culture. And by the way, we just spent $1 bajillion on this new big building, so we really would like to see your shining faces in it. I mean, again, like you said, it's a transaction. I will never work for Apple. I am very content with that. If Apple came to me one day, I would be like, you got to be out your dang mind, because the t-shirt, blue jeans, that is my wardrobe. That is conference shirt every day. I'm not going into someone's office unless I'm using their conference room for a Zoom call, and then I'm going home. And I have made a very good and very successful career doing that. And I know so many people that have done that. And I know so many of those people that would love for Apple to call them one day and say, hey, that amazing technology that you've made, we'd love for you to come do that at Apple. But we know for a fact that that'll never happen, because Apple is so stuck in their culture, in their ways, in their, oh my gosh, someone at Inc. decided to write a hit piece about us. Don't worry, the Apple community will just bash them, instead of actually going, you know what? Maybe Apple does lean to China too much. I wonder why. Oh, it's because all of their market now is growing in China and not in the US anymore. So they can do whatever they want to the US citizens, but in China, they got to play it easy, because otherwise they won't continue to see that growth. And then that's when the stakeholders will get mad.
So give it, for instance, what is it you think that they're doing to the U.S. customers that they're not doing to China-based customers?
I think in general, Apple's regard towards the US employees, as well as their lack of innovation on their technology outside of their hardware.
Hold it. No,
I will give them their
You
credit on
talk-
their hardware.
You mentioned customers. Don't talk about employees.
Okay.
You mentioned customers.
So what have they not done for Apple customers?
No, that's not. You said a little while ago that about you implied you said that Apple is doing things to U.S. customers they're not doing to China customers.
I said Apple does not care about the growth of their U.S. market base as much as they do their Chinese market base.
And
Apple doesn't care about what the customers think in the U.S.
How do you know that?
Because we're going to buy the product anyway. Like I said, I don't have a choice at this point. If I buy an Android phone, I have to cancel credit cards. I have to figure out what I'm going to do with all these Apple devices that I've bought. And yes, this is very much a J problem. But the thing that I see is this is a continued problem amongst a lot of people to where they don't feel they have a better option. And to me, that is the problem. When you can have an app out there like Dark Sky that's doing a really awesome thing and it goes, hey, what's the end goal of this? I don't know. Keep making money until someone like Apple comes and scoops us up. Like it's not just Apple. It is a market problem. Right now, technology is stalling because of the lack of competition in the market. Because if you're good, you get acquired. That's the end goal for most of these companies. Get good enough so that some company can acquire us and we can go make the second Clubhouse.
Okay, I'm not convinced that Dark Sky wanted to be bought by Apple. I am convinced that Apple made Dark Sky an offer they could not refuse. Because Apple knew that their weather data and their weather system was lacking, and Dark Skies absolutely wasn't. And so Apple took some of that money that they sit on and went and wrote a big fat check. Like, I absolutely believe that. I think that's the same thing that happened with Shortcuts when it was still workflow. That's probably the same thing. For the record,
what happened with this lady.
Yeah, for the record, I am calling out lazy journalism in this article. I'm not calling out that Apple. I'm not saying Apple is above reproach. I've never said that. And Jay, you should know I did an entire episode of TDO where we went, what Apple's up to in China is shenanigans. Mm-hmm. And it's not cool. And we don't like it. And Apple needs to get their poop in a group about it. We did that. We totally did that. And I know you listen. And I'm like, wait, we did this. So anyway, so it's the thing is, if you talk about Apple, you will get clicks. And if you see any sort of breathless headline about something that Apple is up to, if you read that exact same headline and swap in Google or Microsoft or Dell or anybody else, and you still have news, then it's a story. But a lot of times people are just writing stuff about Apple because if it has Apple in the headline, then readers will click on it. And that's all it takes. And in a lot of cases, that's all people are looking for. There's a reason a lot of people take those controversial stances. And the reason for that is because if I put Apple in the headline and act like I'm calling them out for something, then it's gonna absolutely generate more clicks, because if you call out Microsoft for doing something, nobody's gonna click on that and read that story. Nobody cares.
Not only will people click on it, but people on MacVoices will talk about it. Well, to me, I think the most ridiculous thing about this story is the headline, which is saying that, nobody, Apple's image is polished and it's unthinkable to think of anything wrong about Apple. People write hit pieces on Apple like 20 times a day.
Yeah.
So what a ridiculous headline. It's like, Mr. Aitan, have discovered that there's chinks in Apple's armor. And then he, says things that everybody has said over and over again for, all the time. People
it is
bashing
clickbait.
on Apple for...
It's clickbait, but at the same time, like, can we not agree that, like, hey, Apple is attempting to be very, very stringent in a policy that their workers have expressed disinterest in. And again, like, I think that there's kind of this idea, there's this facade of like, if I want to work as a developer, like, oh, you got to work for a FANG company. If you work for a FANG company, like, you can just retire. And I'm not gonna lie. If a FANG company if a FANG company wants to hire me, you've heard my demands. Conference T-shirt, work from home. Like, we got to have these conversations. But I think that there is a small group of people, and I will get, this is not just Apple. This is a market problem. This is a community problem. I've been dealing with a lot of my friends complaining about the gaming industry right now, considering California is suing the crap out of Activision Blizzard for very bad practices. But I bet if you would have asked every game developer out there that's around my age, what's a company you would have loved to have worked for? They would have been like, oh, Blizzard, hands down. Blizzard has the best culture ever. And I know if you ask a lot of developers, hey, what would be a cool company to go work for? Oh, Apple, best company ever. That culture, that style, that discount on Apple products, like all these things would be such an amazing thing to do. But now I think what's happening is, for a very first time, there have been a couple of things that have happened all of a sudden where you have people at Apple being like, you know what, maybe another FANG company might be a better approach. I think that's all that's saying.
This isn't an Apple problem, or this is a humanity problem. This is what happens when, humans interact with each other, and when, some humans accumulate power, or any human that accumulates power, it doesn't always get used in the benefit of humanity. I mean, like, it never does.
And it worked because we're talking about it.
The sky is blue, the grass is green. All the other Fortune 500s are doing terrible things, but they haven't managed to get a generic Fortune 500 voices show. Nobody talks about that shit. It's boring as hell.
For the record, I tried not to talk about it. I was happy to stay with watch bands and monitors.
I wanted to fight.
I'm just putting out there. I'm always the one that gets accused of making trouble and stirring everything up. And this time I'm like, no, let's talk about watch bands and curved monitors and what have yous. And no.
So one time you behaved. Jim,
it's nice.
Jim, I hear what you're saying. I agree with the humanity part. I disagree with some of Jay's concerns, because I think the market will take care of it. If I go to a steakhouse and sit down and order pancakes, and they say, we don't make pancakes here, well, should they be demanded? I expect them to change everything and make pancakes?
Look forward to your article in Business Insider about how their business model is an utter failure.
Yeah,
I mean, companies get big enough that it's a monopoly, and 40 years ago, everyone was like, "Oh, IBM is doing all kinds of terrible things," and they were, and nobody imagined that they could ever be dethroned. 20 years ago, 25 years ago was Microsoft, and Microsoft was doing terrible things. And absolutely, Apple is doing stuff that I don't agree with, but they're, that's just what, railroads, go back 100 years ago, the railroads built America, but they also, did terrible things and treated their customers and the world at large horribly. It's a repeating story that comes over and over and over again. It's, history repeats, and, Apple's the largest corporation. Of course, they're doing lots of things that aren't, that great. And even when they were smaller, they did things that weren't that great, but, they're never the fuzzy, my pal's Apple. That's a fantasy that people constructed.
I guess I'm having a hard time equating, Jim, some of the examples. Your examples were great. I'm having a hard time equating that with wanting workers demanding to be able to wear jeans and T-shirts and work at home.
Well, I would, the fact, I would, look at from developers, like you can't, Apple completely controls what's in the App Store and what they're doing to the web. There's been some interesting articles over the past week about that. Jay made a comment that he thought that Apple employees weren't passionate. I don't think I agree with that. Most of the engineers that I've interacted with are very passionate ones, and maybe even more so the ones that have been there a long time. I think I don't think I would want to wear, but more of a practical thing that I don't want to move, and I like working from home too. But it is kind of a place where people get to do things that impact the world. And I think a lot of Apple engineers, when you talk to them, I think they really are like they see that opportunity to do something that actually impacts people. Yeah, of course, you have a big company, there's layers of management. I had a friend that was an Apple sales engineer for a long time, and and he's been gone from there for at least 5 years, but he had these unbelievable stories of how messed up they were. He was there for about a dozen years, and the last 5 years he was just like couldn't wait to get out, but he was getting ready to retirement age, and really needed to wait till he was vested. But
don't let Atten know about that. It'll be another hit piece.
Well, there's no end of pieces.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I'm curious, Chuck. What about this stood out to you? That apparently this really stood out as you wanted to talk about it, and I guess I don't really understand this. To me, it just seems like yet another post. There's a million of them.
Jim, I guess, and we got to get out of here, but sort of to wrap it up, and to address something Jay said, I think I would have been equally offended if I saw this piece written in the same way by just about any company that I know something about. And because I think you have to be somewhat educated, otherwise you're going to take it at face value and think, oh my God, these people are terrible. But I don't agree with you, Jay. I think it's almost our obligation to call out a hit piece as a hit piece, whether it's political or whether it's business or whether it's health or whatever. I mean, if you'd written something up like this about COVID, you could have either terrified people or had people running around with pitchforks. And it was the way
do that every day.
Yeah, I was going to say if people shouted about this like they would about fake news, the only thing that would have happened is a bunch of people with Apple stock would have probably just became richer when people sold their Apple stock and they bought more.
Maybe so, but I mean, this is not COVID Voices, so that's why we're not talking about this. Is Mac Voices, and that's why we're talking about this. But it's just the idea that something is so clearly biased, so clearly. It's not. There was some reporting in there, but there was an awful lot of interpretation, and that interpretation is the thing that bugs me the most. Because even for the evening news, I don't want news interpreted. If you want to have an opinion piece or an editorial, great. But if you're going to give me facts, give me facts. We started. I can't even remember if we did it. No, it was during the show when we were talking about the new Magic Keyboard with the with touch sensor. Okay, so what are the facts about that? And then what are the opinions? This group stated the facts, then they stated their opinions. And that's what I like. I love this show because we do give our opinions, but I like to think that we try to base them in facts and then run with it, as opposed to this that just seems so biased. And Jay, I value, it seems like we beat on you a lot, but I really do value your perspective because you try to keep us honest. Not sure that you always do, but you try to keep us honest.
I think I've mentioned this to people before. For those that don't know, we get off of this and we're all friends at the end. It's like WWE. There's a lot of fighting, but people only get really hurt a little bit of the time. To me, my argument with this is not, it's like, I like your energy, Chuck. I like that anger. I like that passion, but let's make sure it's pointed at the right North Stars. Because if we're only arguing about how Apple is being lambasted in the press, it's like, who cares? They got enough lawyers and stuff. They'll tell them what to do. But let's talk about some of the things that Apple does do that seem to be a little sus at times. And it's like, hey, if we can bring that same passion to call Apple on their BS that we do to call these publishers on their BS, I'm all about it. And at the end of the day, I got a good fight out of it, so I'm happy.
All right. Well, everybody's blood pressure is up and running, and that's good. That's good. Guys, this has been every Tuesday night. This is just a blast. I really, really appreciate you all showing up. Chat room, I appreciate you showing up and throwing in your comments and questions. I am surprised at one thing, though, that nobody realized why I'm wearing a pink shirt.
I thought it was to match your background.
I thought it was to match the complexion of your face right now.
No.
Don't you wear a pink shirt a lot?
Yeah, but I had a special reason tonight.
Are we in Breast Cancer Awareness Month? And I totally missed what the date is.
No, that's not a bad guess, Jeff. No, I mean, pink goes with the calamine lotion that is smeared all over my body.
You got to accept it as a role as the Pink Panther.
There you go. There you go.
Yeah.
That's my favorite. I have chosen that one as the truth.
Yeah. Let's get out of here.
I'll be over here updating Chuck's nickname in my phone.
Let's get out of here. David Ginsburg, where can we find you when you're not here having your blood pressure driven up?
Yeah. You can find me at In Touch with iOS and InTouchWithIOS.com. Jeff Gamet is on the show this week. And you also can find me on YouTube at youtube.com/DaveG65. Find me on the Mac Show on the British Tech Network on Fridays, usually. And Mac to the Future livecast on Monday nights now. It's moved to Monday nights going forward. We just did the show yesterday. And I'm on Twitter, DaveG65. Thank you as always.
It's always great to have you, David. Thank you. Jeff Gamet, how about you when you're not staring at your, 34-inch monitor?
At my 34-inch monitor, it's so big that it's big. Yeah. Anyhow, you can, and it's curved. So you can find me on Twitter and Instagram. I'm Jay Gamet both places. YouTube.com/JGamet and on a bunch of podcasts, including this Thursday. For some reason, Dave lets me on a live show, just like you do, Chuck. So I'll be on In Touch with iOS on Thursday.
Perfect. Thank you, Jeff. Jim Ray, thanks for showing up with all of your screens. So that I get the impression you must just have a nice even tan coming at you from all angles.
Okay. Well, you can find me on the internet at proview.com and on Twitter at proviewjim. And next month you'll find me at Virtual Mac Talk.
Excellent. Thank you, Jim. Good to have you. Kelly Guimont, I know we can find you a lot of places. Where are they?
Well, if you swing a strip of bacon on the internet. No. Currently, you can find me texting the Pink Panther that it's time for us to get out of here. I totally updated Chuck's nickname in my phone. So you can find me 5 days a week over at macobserver.com, where I do I host the Daily Observations podcast every weekday. You can find me over on the Incomparable Podcast Network, where I have my own show called I Want My MCU TV, where we talk about the latest Marvel show that is on Disney Plus. I occasionally show up over there talking about other things, sometimes Star Wars, sometimes other stuff. You can find me on the After Show with Mike Rose. The two of us do a podcast over at aftershowpodcast.com. Most recently, we had Rich Siegel on as a guest to talk to us about not BB Edit. So you should go find out what Rich wanted to talk to us about, because we were like, yeah, you make software and it's great, but now let's talk about other stuff. And so we did, and it was a lot of fun. It's entirely possible he has recovered from recording that by now. So, fingers crossed. And the rest of the time, you can find me on Twitter as Verso. I'm sure I've forgotten something. I show up on Dave's podcast regularly. There's an excellent chance you will see me at Virtual Max Talk. And the rest of the time, like Chuck said, I'm not very hard to find.
Great. Thank you, Kelly. Good to have you. We missed you last week.
Yes.
Mr. Fuccio, you still have that same mountain in the background.
I know. I didn't have enough time before the show to create another background image, but I will, as I'm sure you and everyone knows.
Where can we find you?
Oh, best way is Twitter at Mark Fuccio, MarkFuccio, all one word, or at LinkedIn as well.
Great. Thanks for being here, Mark. Last but absolutely not least, Jay, often wrong but never in doubt, Miller. Where can we find you?
Oh,
Hi,
that
folks.
was wonderful.
Hi, folks. We've had a lot of fun here today, but I want to remind you, smoking is bad. Oh, sorry,
Jay-
wrong ending.
Jay, you're frozen
And you froze.
again.
And
Yeah,
I'm
you're
frozen.
frozen
Oh no!
You
Oh,
you
no.
abuse the host and you freeze.
I guess.
See,
Oh.
you're not using Keynote, Jay. That's the problem.
If I can just share my screen for a second, I can show you these pamphlets. No. But if you like the energy I bring to the show, but you wish it was a little bit more positive and a little bit more about productivity, head over to relay.fm/conduit, where I, with my co-host Kathy Campbell, bring the same level of attack to big productivity and all the apps and culture that are associated with that. We're taking the man down one checkbox at a time.
That
He
is
sounds-
awesome.
He sounds so noble. He sounds so noble. Jay,
I
thanks
love
for
that
being
it's
here.
you're just portraying your show as an adversarial relationship with a to-do list.
I mean, that's actually
not
pretty
wrong.
accurate. Yeah, it's
you're
not
not
at all.
wrong.
That-
I
that-
just
that
really like
sounds
that
like
that's how you're coming
life.
out. Yeah.
Our last episode was so very much when you can't handle this list.
Oh man. Chat room, thank you so much for being here as well. I hope you enjoyed it. This one did not come off at all as I planned, but you never know. One quick announcement. We may be dark next Tuesday. We may not. There's about a 70% chance that I will be out of town. So if you watch the MacVoices feeds, we'll try to post some notices up there so we don't leave you hanging. But I'd say the odds are in favor of us being dark next week. We'll be back the following. Until then, I'm Chuck Joyner. This is MacVoices Live. We would love to have you join us in the YouTube chat rooms Tuesday nights at 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific. Get over there. It's a lot of fun. Until the next time, thanks for watching. Visit MacVoices.com for show notes and to connect with Chuck on social media. Get involved in our Facebook group or like our Facebook page and get more out of your Apple tech with MacVoices Magazine, free on Flipboard and on the web. And if you find value in it all, consider supporting us through either our Patreon campaign at patreon.com/MacVoices or by making a one-time donation via the PayPal link on our front page and in the show notes of each episode. You will join these fine people who help bring you MacVoices. Advertising handled by Backbeat Media at backbeatmedia.com. Bandwidth provided by CashFly at cashfly.com.